Yep.
Yeah, we've worked on a lot of stories together.
I know. Thank you so much. So some of mine pitches made the cut.
They did.
And I know the ones that didn't. So
for me, like with Rick and Jeff Grammer and Ken Sickinger, the sports guys, I had seen their bylines in the paper like I was like 12, 13. It's so cool, man. Like they were like Hollywood stars to me when I was a kid, and well, now we're colleagues. So.
Hello, welcome to Good Job New Mexico. I'm Stacy Johnston.
And I'm Leo Castaneda.
And today we're talking with Matthew Narvaiz, and he is the business editor at the Albuquerque Journal, which is such a reputable publication. Used to be the Tribune. I've known it since forever. What about you?
I'm a subscriber. As I mentioned, I read his newsletter every day, the business newsletter. And yeah, I think it's a great paper, and they do so much amazing business coverage. That's how I stay up to date on what's going on in the economy.
For sure. He's a reporter that I've gone to in my career, and he's been somebody that's really helped me out, and I hope I've helped him out with making a couple of stories. But it's really important what we talked about with the relationship with the people that are pitching a story versus, and also the editor or the reporter that's going to put the story together. So it just makes a big impact when you can build that relationship up and like help each other out in your careers.
Absolutely. And journalism is everything you do is with people, talking to people, interviewing people, asking questions. And you can see how I was so impressed how he knows, he remembers the names, and he mentioned the names of everyone that had helped him along in his career, because that's what makes him a good journalist. And that's what makes you good at being in journalism, is building those relationships and knowing the people along the way.
For sure. His job sounds really busy.
It does. It does. I have so much appreciation now. Every time I'm going to think about that, every time I get that newsletter in the morning and I'm reading it, I'm going to think he had to get up at 6:15 in the morning to do this. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, just to roll out of bed and immediately start working.
I know.
It's like very disciplined.
Even before getting his breakfast burrito.
Right. I think it was like before he even had his coffee. He was reading emails.
I can't even read my emails without my coffee.
But yeah, exciting job. If you're thinking about being a journalist, this is really fun career path to hear how he got to where he is. And just really it's back to the relationship building and the people that are recommending him on his assignments, which then the assignments carried him on to his next assignment. It's just really fascinating. And that there's different avenues that you can get your news. It doesn't have to be just like the paper print. It
doesn't have to. It can be, he talked, they have podcasts, they have their website. There's something for everyone. There's social media. And, you can and if you want to do that, like he said, just start going out there and finding the areas that they're not able to cover. Like he said, there's more stories than the reporters can cover. And so find something that you want to write about and start doing it.
And there you go. So without further ado, please enjoy Matthew with the Albuquerque Journal. Like I was saying, when you first got here, super busy on your day. I'm shocked that you had the time to even come in here and talk with us, but thanks so much for doing that.
Yeah, of course. On Fridays, this is the day I usually proof our Sunday Business Outlook section. So
is it stressing you out that you're here?
So I've had the reporters take a look at their stories, and when I go back, I'll take a look at all the pages. But that's usually how I spend my Fridays. And then, of course, if there's any breaking news, we try to take it slow on Fridays on the business desk, but it doesn't always work out that way.
For sure. You're always ready to go if there's like breaking news.
Oh, yeah. And there's like this saying in journalism, it's called a Friday news dump, which it tends to happen pretty often. And it's never fun because you're always looking forward to the weekend. And then like 4:00 hits and someone's like, hey, we have this really big thing to announce. Can you get on the phone? And it's like, shoot, well, between the interview and, having a reporter write the story and going through the editing process, that keeps us here to like 7 or 8.
Okay, well, I'll be honest, on my side, when I'm sending out press releases on Friday afternoons, I'm like, this isn't going to go anywhere. I get really stressed out when we're sending something on a Friday because I'm like, I don't feel like this is optimal time. It's got to be like any other time during the week. But like Friday afternoon, especially like after 3, you might as well just plan for the next week.
Yeah. I guess it depends on what you're sending out, right?
Okay.
Right, because usually the Friday's news dump is like, I hope no one covers this.
Yes.
So I'm going to announce it at like the worst possible time. So hopefully no one will notice.
Yeah, I almost think that's what's going through folks' heads whenever they send it out that late, but maybe not. I don't know.
Definitely not. I'll be honest. It's probably because like we're waiting for approvals to happen and whatever. And then by the time we're able to send it out, it's like, well, it's now or never. So we're sending it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting job being an editor at a newspaper in 2025. That's for sure. A lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
I want to hear more about that, but I want to take us all the way back to the beginning. Have you always enjoyed the written word? And was that your favorite subject in school?
The written word.
Yeah. Like writing.
Yeah. That sounds very biblical.
I wouldn't say it was my favorite subject in school. I do go pretty far back with the written word. So, when I was a young kid, every once in a while we'd pick up the journal. My mom actually delivered the paper for about 2 years. I was probably like 8 or 9. And
did you help?
I did help.
How fun.
We delivered on the west side of Albuquerque. So, we do it in the afternoon. It was actually the Tribune, I believe it was. So it was the afternoon paper. That was interesting. At the time, I wasn't really thinking much about journalism as a career. I mean, I was still a young kid. But, as far as the written word is concerned, I mean, as a kid, I had subscribed to Sports Illustrated for a really long time, ESPN, the magazine. But I had never had thought about it as a career. Initially, from a really young age, I had wanted to be a sportscaster. I wanted to be on Sports Center. And so for me, it was just finding a job in sports, and that was kind of the avenue. But high school came around, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to be on TV every day. That does not sound so appealing. So, I'd interned at ESPN Radio here in the metro area for about a couple of months as a senior in high school. I worked on it's an old show. It's not around anymore, but it was called The Locker Room with Bob Brown. Some people here probably know who Bob Brown is. He used to be on KOAT, and then he had this 5 o'clock show, or was it 4 o'clock, every weekday. And so I did that. It was like a 3-hour show. Realized I didn't like radio either. So
were you bummed out because before you even started your day one, was it like, yes, dream achieved. I'm at ESPN. Yes, it's radio, but like you're in the realm.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. I was pretty excited, and it was a good experience. But, I think just talking for 3 hours straight was just not something I wanted to do, especially because as the hour turned, they talked about the same thing again, but just for a new audience, right? Because people are in their cars for like 10 to 15 minutes at a time. So it was just a repetition of the same few talking points every hour that just didn't appeal to me. I wanted to do, something new each hour.
Right. Have that ongoing conversation.
Exactly.
Not just, yeah.
Exactly. So I wouldn't say I was great at writing in high school or middle school. I went to Manal here in Albuquerque, and oh man, I had a really tough English teacher. His name was Mr. Lucero. I mean, this guy would like get a ruler out and like measure, because we had to do double space, and it was crazy. So
wow.
And I'm like,
That's
no
intense.
double space.
Yeah.
John knows I'm
Yeah.
like, get rid of those double spaces.
Yeah, I mean, out of the entire school, there were probably just like half a dozen kids who were able to achieve A's in his classes. I mean, I was like a C+ writing student. So it wasn't really until college that I really like honed my craft a little bit. And then, obviously thereafter as a professional. So it wasn't until 18 whenever my writing got a lot better.
Well,
Yeah.
and writing for school is such a different skill set than writing for journalism or professionally. And
yeah, writing essays is nothing like writing a news story. We have an entirely different format, when writing news. So we call it the inverted pyramid. We try to get a lot of the most crucial information up top. You always want to have a really good nut graph, 4th, 5th graph in, which kind of sets things into context for the readers, and then maybe some of the less important information sort of towards the bottom of the story. And that's not how you write essays. That's for sure.
has it been hard going from writing to doing more of the editing?
Oh yeah, I know it's probably not always easy on my reporters. I had an editor back in the day who would call it killing your darlings. So, killing paragraphs of stories that maybe aren't necessary or don't really work within the story. So, yeah, it's entirely different than writing it out, right? Because maybe you turn in like and we measure by column inches. So we, instead of saying like 700 words, give me like 15 inches. Yeah. So we still do that. It's definitely probably not easy on my reporters when I'm cutting things down, but we have only a certain amount of space in print. And of course we have the website, but with our print edition, we just have to make sure it's able to fit in a certain format. And of course, you just, like you said, you don't want to go too long, right? It could be a 200-word story. It doesn't need to be 700 words sometimes. So
Leo was also a reporter, journalist way
long
back
time
when.
ago. Way back when.
At a newspaper?
At a newspaper, yeah. Online and then at the Mercury News in San Jose.
Oh,
primarily.
yeah. That's a pretty big paper.
Yeah, it is, won the Pulitzer once. I didn't win the Pulitzer. The newspaper did. Well, before I was there. But yeah, does that thinking in sort of almost like in the physical realm, does that help you think through how someone's going to consume it? Because online, you never know if they're going to be on a computer, on their phone, on a big screen, on, whatever they're doing, but you can always control what it's going to look like on print. Does that help? How does that affect how you're thinking about stories when you're thinking in terms of like looking at a thing that's 15 inches long versus looking at a thing that's like 100 inches long?
Yeah. So with print, kind of the way we go into thinking about stories, especially with our Sunday section, is art first, right? We want to make sure that these stories are illustrated well. Are there numbers within the story that we could pull out to make an interesting graphic? So that's first and foremost how we think about, placing our stories in print. I don't want to say online comes secondary because things are changing, right? Within journalism and even here at the Journal, there's a much bigger digital push. But as far as the way I think when it comes to editing, it's always like, can we take a really good photograph with this story? And will this photograph help tell the story in some ways before people even read it? So that's kind of how I go into the process as it relates to the print edition, at least. So, like I said, with Sunday, that's kind of like our bigger section. We have a daily business page where maybe a new restaurant opened, we'll throw it on there. But, on Sunday, I like to keep it to, we want to answer a question for our readers. So we try to look at what we put out on Sundays through that lens. Like, what questions do readers have and how can we answer it?
Okay, so walk us through a typical day.
Do you want to go from the very beginning?
Yeah, from the very beginning. The alarm's going off.
The alarm goes off. It's 6:15. The first thing I do is I check my emails. There's probably about 60, 70 emails I get between the time I stop looking in the evening, which is around 8 or 9, and when I wake up. Going through all those emails, I'm an inbox zero kind of guy, so I will of course, there are some where it's just maybe like a web post email from the Journal. I'm not going to look at that, but a lot of the news releases we get, I'll look at, see if they're something we want to include in terms of a story in print, and then I'll assign them out. That's kind of how I start my morning off. As soon as I see those releases, I'm messaging reporters, and they're usually up pretty early too. We have a Google chat that we use, and that's kind of how we communicate before I get in the office. And so check the emails, get up, get some coffee, and then I start writing my newsletter. We have a daily business outlook newsletter where I typically feature 2 stories, and then I write like an intro from like a little bit of a personal intro. So this week it's been pretty Dallas Cowboys heavy because I'm a really big fan.
Is that your team?
That's my team.
Oh, okay.
So, I know we haven't even gotten to breakfast on your regular day yet, but
Yes.
Something that I love about your newsletter, I'll review myself as an avid reader, is when you ask for recommendations.
Yes.
Can you tell us about some of the tell us a little bit about that and some of the recommendations you've gotten?
A good example, and probably the one that had gotten the most responses, it was a couple months back. I'm a big breakfast burrito fan. I mean, if you're from New Mexico, you kind of have to be, right? And the way I measure breakfast burritos, it has to be bacon, potatoes, eggs, and green chili. So I woke up one morning and I was like, you know what? I'm always eating the same at the same restaurants. I kind of want to try something new that I maybe haven't tried before. And yeah, just threw the question out there like, hey, do you guys have any recommendations on like maybe some spots I haven't been to? It did yield some pretty good answers from places far away in New Mexico that I may not travel to immediately.
But it's on your list.
But it's on my list. A lot of recommendations for Blake's, of course, Golden Pride, classics. I mean, for me, a Saturday ritual is waking up, getting a coffee, and going to Golden Pride right there on Wantabo and waiting in line. That's always get the number 2. I'm a Carne Alvada fan from there. So
Great.
yes, those always yield a lot of responses. And I guess whenever you talk about the Cowboys, a lot of a lot of people have things to say about the Cowboys. That's for sure.
That doesn't surprise me.
None of them good.
Also doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. The reason I do it that way is, whenever you get personal with people, it tends to keep them around a little bit longer in the newsletter, and they're interested in the stories that are below. So, it's just giving people a glimpse into my life a little bit, outside of the journal newsroom. And it's really helped out. I mean, the newsletter has been doing really well. It reaches about 25,000 people every day, really highly engaged. And so just looking to grow that thing, man, it's been a fun ride doing it the last few months.
That's awesome. Has it been challenging? Because in journalism, there's so much that you're taught about, like, you're not the story, don't put yourself in the story. And then you're finding this way. So you're not injecting yourself in, if you're doing a story about a solar plant, you're not being like, and this is what I think about the sun. But like finding ways to show that personality, has that been a challenge?
It's definitely been a challenge, right? Because for so long I was trained not to be the story. You come from like an objective standpoint, right? You're just a person standing there observing something. So, getting personal with people, it definitely has been a change for me, but I've gotten comfortable with it. I've been doing this since February now. So it's something I've gotten used to, but at first it was not easy, letting people into my life, my life a little bit. So, but it's fun. I enjoy it.
Newsletters written, sent out, then what?
It's sent out. And then I wait for responses. Some days it doesn't yield anything, especially if I don't have the time to give it as big of a personal touch. But for the most part, people are responding within 10 to 15 minutes. I get emails a couple hours after sometimes late in the evening or the next day. And then I tend to write back. I do my best. I get so many emails. I do my best to respond to our readers, especially. They are the ones keeping the lights on at the end of the day. And, it's always fun just to have a conversation with someone new, especially someone who's reading our work. So, that could turn into talking about, maybe the Cowboys, talking about story ideas. And it's fun. It's fun, chatting with folks that I don't really, get to work with all the time.
So are you mostly at home, or do you guys all go into the office?
Oh, we go into the office. We don't have like any sort of mandate where it's 5 days from the office. I kind of let my reporters do as they please, but a lot of us we like to come in every day. It's nice to, gather in a group, shoot ideas off of each other. It's easier to edit when you have, a reporter right next to you rather than doing it from home. So yeah, I start my days doing the newsletter from home. I finish that up around 8:39. I send it to a couple of people for edits, and then I drive into the office.
So you're missing all that morning traffic. So that's nice.
Yes. That's the nice thing about it, right? Is I'm missing the morning traffic. But yeah, drive in anywhere from like 9:30 to 10:30, talk with my reporters about what they have going on for the day. I usually already know what they have going on. We have a budget where we throw stories on, we're texting back and forth, phone calls in the morning. And so just checking with them. And then at 11 o'clock, we have a newsroom meeting where all of the editors and reporters gather and we talk about what we have for the day, just to make sure that we're covering our bases, not working on the same things. And that usually lasts for about half an hour. And then after that, everyone breaks and we start reporting.
Is that common for you guys to be covering the same story and like,
there's been a couple of times where some pitches have, a couple of different reporters have had the same pitch. And then we just kind of parse it out like, okay, you focus on this, you focus on that. It doesn't happen too often though. Mostly because, every reporter at the Journal has their own beat. There is a little bit of crossover here and there, but yeah, for the most part, we're not covering the same thing. Yeah, so I was a staff writer at the Journal for a couple of years, and then I was promoted to business editor by our new executive editor, Jay Newton Small, who started last year in October, I believe. And so quickly I had to hire a staff because it was already kind of a skeleton crew for a little bit there. So my first hire was a retail and real estate reporter, which at the Journal, it's like an entry-level beat, but it's a really fun beat. And it's probably, at its best, which it is right now, the most read beat in the newsroom outside of Lobo basketball. People, they're always interested in what's opening up, what buildings are being erected. stuff like that. So I, I was at the New Mexican for a short time last year, about 5-6 months. And when I left, they didn't have anyone to replace me. So I had trained up an intern that they had, a local news fund fellow. Her name was Kylie Garcia. And so when I came back to the Journal, I had the chance to see the work she was doing on the business desk over there. I mean, she was handling this thing by herself in Santa Fe, killing it. And so I was like, hey, how would you feel about working at the Journal?
Just poached her.
I poached her. Like I said, a really fun beat. She's really awesome to work with. She's been killing it. So hired her. She started in March. And then I hired Natalie Robbins. She is sort of doing the job that I had before, which is covering the economy. It's a little bit of everything, right? Money, jobs, power, stuff like that. So she's been covering that beat. I mean, yesterday she had a story on a strike that was taking place here at the Creamland Dairy plant in Albuquerque. So that's like typical for, an economy story. And she's also been killing it. She from Tucson, didn't have as much newspaper experience. She, had graduated from U of A few years back with a creative writing degree, went to New York City for a bit, was hanging around, and then decided to go back to school, got her master's from the Newmark Graduate School of Journalism, went back to Tucson, worked at like an online weekly for about a year. And, I was reading through her stuff and I was like, she's just super talented. Like, we need to bring her here. And I mean, the writing is so clean. The reporting is so good. She's an overthinker like me. So she's covering her bases pretty often, which is nice. It's always nice to have a reporter who's like that. And then I hired a third reporter recently. She just started full time, I want to say 3 weeks ago. Her name is Hannah Garcia. She was a Dow Jones News Fund intern over the summer for the business desk. So she came from UTA, University of Texas at Arlington. She covered some evergreen business stories for us, was kind of on a general assignment. And we had another reporter that had covered tech and energy before, and she'd left. So, and Hannah just did such a great job that we, promoted her to the tech and energy role. And I mean, she's already gotten like 5 or 6 scoops, which has been great. Yeah. Yeah. She's been really good.
What's your philosophy as you're having, conversations with your reporters about what stories you are or aren't going to pick up, because there's just so much going on?
Yeah. It's a 4-person team and 3 of them are reporting. There are way too many stories out there for us to cover. So when it comes to dailies, like just today is a good example. There were a couple of, and I don't want to say who they're from or what it's really about, but, like news pitches that they were business oriented, but it's like, is this for the Journal, and does this serve our readers at the end of the day, right? Like, we're trying to make a difference here, or like move the needle in some ways. So, we tend to filter out a lot of stuff. I do my best to respond to people when they pitch like, hey, I just don't think it's really for us right now. And then for Sundays, what I've been doing since I started, and maybe I've been a little overbearing, is I've been assigning a lot of like enterprise or feature stories. But, now they've been getting comfortable in their beats and they've been pitching me. And that's kind of how the process should go. For Sundays, like I said, we want to answer a question. I think the reporters have gotten to a point now where they're like, okay, we see what you're doing here with Sundays. So they've been doing a really good job of pitching. And, a story that we have this Sunday was actually a story that was pitched by a reporter of mine. So that was a nice change. Yeah.
Did you send out any pitches today? Because this would be
Not
a brutal
today.
way for you to find out that it's not
man,
getting
it was
picked
me.
up.
Harsh, brutal. No, but you're always so nice to take my phone calls.
Yes.
When I call you. I'm like, hey, Matthew, we've got this thing going on. Can you send a reporter?
Well, we've worked together for so long too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how long have you been at the department?
26 years.
26 years. So, we had first met, I believe, when I was at Albuquerque Business First, which is where I got my start in business reporting. And, that carried over to the Journal, of course. And
Yep.
yeah, we've worked on a lot of stories together.
I know. Thank you so much. So some of mine pitches made the cut.
They did. And
I know the ones that didn't. So
Going to take us way back. Talk to us about the Taos, doing news in Taos. Well, how you got your start there and what that was like.
That was fun. So I left UNM in the spring of 2019, and then I went, I was looking for a job. I was working at a vape shop for about 6 months in the meantime to just make some money and pay the rent, right?
Sure.
That was an interesting job, by the way. And so, I was applying to jobs, obviously, across the country. I wanted to stay here in New Mexico. I love it here, born and raised in Albuquerque. And, I had been to Taos a few times. It's magical. Right. I wanted to live there. So I applied for a sports editor job there, and I talked to the then editor, Stacy Matlock. She was a longtime Santa Fe, New Mexican reporter on the environment beat, and she took a chance on me. I mean, I had worked at the student paper for 4 years, but, I didn't have, of course, any professional experience. I didn't have any internships that I had done. And so I went there. I covered prep sports. In the fall, I was doing a lot of football and soccer, and, they have hockey out there too. So and they do.
I did not know that
They
at all.
have a hockey team. It was, that was really fun. So it was just covering prep sports, and that, being a sports reporter is a really tough job. I mean, it's definitely not a 9 to 5. Not saying the business desk is either, but sports.
They're never 9 to 5. It's like.
They're never 9 to 5,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
So, did that all the way through March of 2020.
Whoa.
Right. And then
the world stopped.
right.
COVID hit, sports stopped. There was nothing going on. The paper wasn't making any money, right? People weren't buying ads, business stopped. So I was laid off for a couple of months, but then Stacy brought me back on. We had some money from the local news fund here to fund a reporting position. They brought me back on to cover education. That was a wild time, covering education during COVID.
Yeah, I bet.
Wouldn't recommend. A lot of, upset parents. Of course, I get it, right? You're at home all day with your kids. It's an entirely different world. So did that through October of 2020, but I was looking to get back home. It was just such a weird time. We were in lockdown. There was no one in Taos. It was kind of like a ghost town. So I was, looking for a way to get back home. Moved back home. Worked at the Valencia newspaper for a really short period, until I found something that could really pay the bills. Nothing against a smaller paper in Valencia, but it was a long drive to Belen every day. I wasn't making the money I needed to make to, sustain myself. So came across the Biz First job. I was hired by Rachel Sams, who was the editor back then. I started there. She had actually left right before I started. And
That's interesting.
Yeah, we had an interim editor for a couple of months until they brought on, Chris Keller was there. He was the managing editor. And so I worked closely with him. So yeah, worked at Biz First for about a year. I started off covering energy. So it was a lot of oil and gas, renewables. But at the time, they were pushing the adult use legislation, the Cannabis Regulation Act. So whenever that was signed by the governor, my beat changed. I started covering cannabis a lot, and like a lot, like 10 stories a week, a lot on this,
Whoa.
which was...
Is that unusual? Isn't it usually 3 to 5 stories a week? So 10 stories a week?
It really depends on the outlet you work at, and Biz First is a little... they're smaller stories, a couple hundred words, like it's not like it is at the Journal. So we don't write as much at the Journal as First, but we could. I mean, if we, with all the stuff we get, we really could, but the idea is at the Journal, right, that
Quality,
we flesh it,
quantity,
flesh it out a little bit. So yeah, worked there for a year. I was covering cannabis lots, and then the Journal was looking for a cannabis reporter right before sales started in April of 22. Brought me on, and then covered cannabis really closely the first year, which was super fun. Covering a new industry. Getting to meet all the players within it, and as it's, I don't want to say it's slowed down because it's still doing pretty well here when you look at the numbers, but as that sort of phased out a little bit, we went to more of like a general economy role. And so I started covering a lot of other things that included some Department of Workforce Solutions stuff.
It's really interesting how just one beat that you're covering can like impact your entire career and take you somewhere totally different.
Yeah. Yeah. So are we talking about Biz First to the Journal?
Yeah. You're a lead
So it did. Led me to the Journal. Had like I said, a really good time covering cannabis for that year. Got to work on a lot of interesting stories. One that always sticks out to me is, really early on, about 6 months into adult use sales, I got to, people kept saying like, you got to go to these border towns, man. Like it's crazy. And, I had the chance to go do a reporting trip in Sunland Park. And I mean, I was there on a Friday, and of course, people are getting out of work. They have the weekend, but those lines were insane. I mean, Sunland Park is,
it's like just
across the street from
Mm-hmm.
Texas. So, I mean, most of the customers, right, were from Texas. And it was, I'd never seen anything like it. I had covered opening day here in Albuquerque and Santa Fe in April of 22. A Friday, 6 months down the line in Sunland Park, the lines were just so much larger. Of course, since then, a lot more dispensaries have opened up in that area. and maybe the foot traffic is a little different than it was back then. But yeah, it was crazy. And it got some attention, about 4, 5, 6 months later, the New York Times did a big expose, very similar story to what I did.
Interesting.
But I can't blame them. It was a good story opportunity.
Yeah.
And, it just really shows like how strong the industry was here in New Mexico at that point.
Totally. And on the leading edge, right? It's
Yeah.
such a developing, that's what makes it so interesting, such a developing market.
What are some of the different positions at the Journal? So there's obviously reporters and editors, but I used to know someone that was like a layout specialist. I don't know if that's the right title, but do you still have those positions?
we call them designers. We
Okay.
still have a team of designers. I think there's about 5 of them in the newsroom who design everything from the sports section to the business section to the news section, any special sections that we have going on. Of course, there's reporters. I don't know how many there are. We have a Southern New Mexico reporter. We just brought on a Northern New Mexico reporter who I actually worked with at the Taos News. He was the assistant editor at the time, John Miller. So that's been a great addition. And then, of course, we have, City Hall, county. We have a reporter that covers the federal government and the congressional delegation here. We have some general assignment reporters that we just kind of throw wherever we need them. And then, of course, on the business desk, on the reporting side, we have a tech and energy reporter, a retail and real estate reporter, and then an economy reporter. So,
okay.
I just want to give a shout out to your Southern New Mexico reporter, Algernon.
Yes.
I think one of the most dapper reporters in the business.
Love Algernon. He so charismatic.
Yeah.
Getting Algernon was a really big get. I mean, he
where was he at Source, New Mexico before?
No, so he was. Whenever I first learned of Algernon, he was working. He was at the Sun News, working with Lucas Pierman, who is also at the Journal now. He's a managing editor. They had a really great team back then, and then they all Gannett, stuff like that. Algernon went to go work for the Deming Headlight as the editor.
Oh,
for a
okay,
little
that's
bit.
what it was. That's what it was.
And then he went to the Las Cruces Bulletin after that.
Bouncing around and reporters constantly coming in and out. Is that normal for, or do reporters typically stay 10 years?
I mean, the hope is, right, that we can keep reporters here as long as we can, because the longer they stay, the knowledge base grows, right? Like, even being a business reporter between BizFirst and the Journal, it's much easier to write stories on, certain topics whenever you have all of this background, all these stories you'd written in the past. But it is typical. You see people come and go pretty often. I mean, like I said, when I took over as business editor, I had to hire a whole new staff, which was a lot. So it is pretty typical, especially as, the industry, especially with newspapers, has faced some challenges. So, people are always looking for the next opportunity. Yeah,
you see fewer and fewer people, right, who are sort of right out of college, get hired by the paper, and then stay on there for 30, 40 years.
Yeah. And the Journal was like that for a really, really long time. Whenever I started in 22, it was a lot of the old guard. I mean, people who were there like 40, 45 years, like Rick Nathanson, a GA reporter. He covered a lot of zoo stuff. He retired after 45 years, I want to say last year. And we still have someone on part-time that's been at the Journal for, I think, going on 48 years, Rick Wright, who is a long-time boxing and like combat sports writer for the sports desk.
Wow.
He's a legend. I think he's in the Sports Hall of Fame here in New Mexico. Which,
oh, wow.
Yeah, he's been doing this for a really long time.
That's what's so cool about a place like the Journal that has such a long history. It's such an intertwined history with the state and the city, and to be kind of part of that must be really, really awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, for me, from like a personal perspective, like with Rick and Jeff Grammer and Ken Sickinger, the sports guys, I had seen their bylines in the paper like I was like 12, 13. And so the fact that I get to work with these people now, like it's so cool, man. Like, they were like Hollywood stars to me when I was a kid, and well, now we're colleagues. So
where do you see your career going? Are you going to go into the sports realm at some point, or?
I really like working on the business desk. I love like the stories we cover, and like I said, in certain cases, it really does make a difference, the reporting that we do. So not to say that sports doesn't, but, I've just really grown to love covering, all of our businesses here and, the crossover between the states and, the federal level. It's just been super fun. And so I want to do this thing as long as I can. I have no plans to move to any other sections or any other papers. The goal for me, whenever I knew I wanted to do newspapers, like work in newspapers, was to come to the Journal. So, having made that dream happen and, getting to move up a little bit, it's been great. And, I want to be part of the change that we're trying to make here, especially as we, transform on a digital level. So really excited to be a part of that. And who knows, maybe there's new opportunities in the future, but right now I'm having a grand old time doing the work that we're doing. So.
That's awesome. What advice would you give to a kid, who's maybe just out of high school or in college or debating whether they want to go to college and are thinking the same, like, I want to work in journalism, whether it's sports or business or arts or whatever they want to cover, breaking news, but, I want to be a reporter, I want to be a journalist. What advice would you give them?
First off, I'd say do it. I know that's not everyone's advice, especially as it relates to the newspaper industry. I'd say go for it. Something I still tell my reporters now is to just put yourself out there, be vulnerable. I get it. The world is changing. People are a little more introverted. It's hard to, create conversations, build relationships with people, but just be vulnerable. Put yourself out there. In some ways, fake it till you make it, right? And that's really just, relationship building is so important in this industry, especially on the business desk. I mean, we don't have reporters on my desk covering like city council meetings or county commission meetings. I mean, it's really going out there and, building these relationships with people in the community and, getting them to the point where they're able to come out and be like, hey, I have this story for you. So, just being vulnerable, it's such an important part of the job, if not the most important. Like writing, sure, great, but relationship building, being vulnerable.
What's the best way to pitch asking for a friend?
I actually
6:15 a.m.
I actually had this conversation with my executive editor a couple of weeks back. There are some folks like trying to figure out like who to contact on the business desk, and I said I get so many emails. It's crazy. The best way to pitch is truly just finding the reporter. And we have a contact page on the Journal's website that shows all of the beats that reporters cover. The best way to like pitch something is like maybe it's a story about housing, or like a real estate story. Go and look for that reporter that is covering real estate. That's usually the best way to go about it. Of course, always include me on the email. But that's kind of I think the best way to go about it is just finding the reporter whose coverage area that is, and once you build that relationship, I'd say probably phone calls, texts after that. I mean, I am quicker to respond to text or phone calls than I am my email, just because, like I said, that inbox it gets crazy every day. So.
And it's such good advice for, not everyone has a Stacy on staff that has been doing this, knows what to do, has those relationships. And there's so many businesses that are doing such interesting things and are so small and scrappy and trying to figure it out. And how do they get in touch with you and your team is such an important piece of how they grow and how then you're able to tell those stories, right?
Mm-hmm. And Stacy's been great. She knows to call me.
I'm like, hey, Matthew, what are you doing tomorrow, 1 p.m.?
Yeah. Actually, this whole podcast was just an excuse to talk about how great Stacy is. It's actually not even going on air. It's just
So just find the reporter that covers a certain thing, and it's always the best way to go about it.
Okay, let's go into some rapid, not so rapid. Ready?
Ready.
Okay, so work from home or in the office, which do you prefer?
Office.
Favorite story you've written?
The Sunland Park cannabis story. That was fun.
That's a great one.
What do you like most about your job?
Getting to see my coworkers every day. They're like a second family to me. They are my family.
Notes, typed or by hand?
I have really, really bad handwriting.
I do too. That never stopped me. And then I would be looking at my notes and like, wait, I can't use that quote. I don't know what it says.
Going out onto assignment with a reporter notepad, I have to come back right away and type that up, because if I try to type it up the next day or something like that, I have no idea what I wrote on my notepad. So, yeah.
Paperback book or audiobook?
Paperback book.
I kind of figured.
Yeah.
I'm an audio. Tell me while I'm driving. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing?
I don't know. This is all I ever wanted to do. Like I said, sports at first, and then it transformed into journalism. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. I love what I do.
Lobos for Aggies.
Lobos.
That's not the last
Lobos. Although we do have a lot of Aggies in the newsroom too, so and they are also from New Mexico. So you know what? How about both?
That's very diplomatic. Well, I think I know where the last one. You can
I
have
know,
the
I
last
think
one.
so too. Red or green.
It depends. Green on a burrito, red on enchiladas.
Okay.
So again, both.
Both. Yep. But if
good.
I had to choose one, probably green.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for
Thanks.
coming in and spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. This is awesome.
Bye. This has been a New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions production. Our producer is Milo Koleski. This episode was engineered and mixed by John Sloan. Theme music is One Fine Day, courtesy of podcast.co. Follow the show on social media at GoodJobNM. For program funding, visit our website, dws.state.nm.us/funding. Bye.